The world seemed to freeze in that single, heart-stopping moment. My eyes flickered downward for just a fraction of a second, a reflex. An instinct I couldn't control, and I saw everything. Before quickly, guiltily, looking away. It all began with something so trivial, so utterly, almost comically accidental, that even now, I still have trouble believing it could have led to the complete and utter unraveling of my entire life. My entire world. It's terrifying, isn't it? How a simple, unexpected accident can rip the carefully constructed veneer off a seemingly perfect family, revealing a dark, dangerous secret that was never, ever meant to see the light of day? I was in the living room of our spacious Westchester home, methodically folding a pile of still warm laundry, when my stepson, Liam, called out from the hallway. "Sophia, can you give me a hand with this for a second?" I turned to see him standing by the grand staircase, fumbling awkwardly with the buckle on his belt. He was wearing a pair of old, faded cargo shorts that sat precariously low on his lean hips, and the worn leather strap had somehow twisted itself at an almost impossible angle. "Can you fix this? It's completely stuck or something," he said, walking towards me, a look of boyish frustration on his handsome face. "Sure, honey," I replied, setting the stack of clean towels down on the armchair. I stepped closer, my fingers working to untangle the stubborn, worn leather from the unforgiving metal buckle. "Hold still," I murmured, concentrating on the task at hand. "Yeah, sorry," he said, and I could feel him holding his breath. His proximity suddenly, unnervingly, close. But as I finally gave the stiff leather strap a firm, decisive tug, the entire buckle assembly gave way with a sudden, soft pop. Before either of us could possibly react, his shorts slid silently, effortlessly, down to his ankles. In that single, suspended, frozen moment, my gaze dropped involuntarily, and I saw him, all of him. Liam stood there, utterly, completely mortified, his hands hovering uselessly at his sides as a deep, dark blush crept rapidly up his neck, suffusing his entire face. "Sorry," he mumbled, hastily, clumsily, pulling his shorts back up. I stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence, my own heart suddenly pounding in my chest. "Yeah," he said, his voice strained, tight. Thanks for the help." He then turned and practically fled up the grand staircase, leaving me alone in the sudden, echoing silence of the living room, my heart still racing a frantic, unfamiliar rhythm, and my mind in an absolute, chaotic turmoil. It was just an accident, I told myself firmly, a ridiculous, awkward, mortifying moment, nothing more. But the charge, almost electric energy he had left behind in the room, the unforgettable, almost searing way his wide, shocked eyes had met mine for that one brief, devastating split second, it changed everything. We never, ever spoke of it again. But from that day forward, an invisible, yet formidable, line had been irrevocably, dangerously, crossed between us. My marriage to his father, Arthur, wasn't a grand, sweeping romance. It was, and had been for some time, a comfortable, quiet, and increasingly sterile arrangement that had long ago lost its initial spark. We had married later in life, me at 45, and him at 51, both of us still nursing the deep, unhealed wounds from our tumultuous first marriages. Arthur was a man of predictable, almost rigid, routines: golf on Saturdays, without fail, monthly, solitary fishing trips to a remote cabin upstate, and a constant, relentless stream of important client dinners that kept him away from home most evenings. I had, over the years, come to accept the profound, echoing silence that so often filled our cavernous, beautifully decorated home, busying myself with my charity work, my committees, my meticulously tended garden. Then, 6 years ago, Liam had moved in. I'd only met Arthur's son a few times during his college years. On obligatory, often strained, holidays, he had been a reserved, almost painfully awkward young man back then, struggling to find his place in the world. But the man who had arrived on our doorstep after all that time was noticeably different. Freshly graduated with a fine arts degree, a life choice Arthur. A man of finance and pragmatism, still openly scoffed at, Liam was now struggling to find his professional footing. Arthur had offered him a room in our large house without even consulting me. But honestly, I didn't mind. The house was far too quiet. And I secretly, almost shamefully, welcomed the prospect of some youthful company. Some new energy. I never, ever expected how profoundly, how dangerously, his very presence would completely alter the carefully controlled atmosphere of our home. Of my life. Liam possessed a natural, easy charm and a dry, disarming wit that effortlessly filled all the empty, silent spaces that Arthur's perpetual presence, yet profound absence, could never touch. It began with small, almost insignificant moments. One morning, he found me out in the backyard, laboriously trimming the overgrown hedges. He leaned against the patio door, nursing a cup of black coffee, a lazy, amused grin on his face. "You're up early," I noted, a little self-consciously. He shrugged, his smile widening. "Couldn't sleep. Besides, someone has to be here to admire all this hard work." I laughed, a genuine, unforced sound. "Don't let Arthur hear you say that," I teased. "He thinks the garden gnomes do it all while he's asleep." Liam's smile faded slightly then. "Arthur doesn't notice much these days. Does he?" His comment was casual, almost throwaway, but it was sharp, perceptive, and it hung, unspoken, in the air between us. Our conversations, after that, grew longer, more frequent, more intimate. He'd linger in the kitchen while I cooked, telling me amusing stories about his college days, or asking, with a genuine interest, for my advice on his frustrating job search. One afternoon, I found him sketching in a worn notebook on the living room couch. The pages were filled with stunningly intricate, almost breathtakingly beautiful portraits and landscapes. "These are incredible, Liam," I said, genuinely, completely amazed by his talent. "Thanks," he said quietly, a blush creeping up his neck. "You should show these to a gallery. You have a real, undeniable talent." He met my eyes then, a faint, almost hopeful smile on his lips. "You're the first person who's ever really said that to me, Sophia." His words, his quiet vulnerability, landed with a weight, a significance, I couldn't quite explain, even to myself. Then came the infamous belt incident, and the unspoken, simmering tension between us became a heavy, almost suffocating shroud. A few nights later, I was washing the dinner dishes when he entered the kitchen, his dark hair still damp from a recent shower. "Sophia," he said softly, and my heart, traitorously, skipped a beat. About the other day," he began, his voice a little shaky. I'm so sorry. That was so incredibly awkward." "It's fine, Liam," I said quickly, turning back to the sink, my own cheeks burning. Let's just forget it ever happened." "I don't think I can," he admitted then, his voice now a near whisper, and the sound of it sent a shiver down my spine. I froze, turning slowly to face him. "Liam, we can't," I started, but the words, the necessary words of denial, of boundary setting, died in my throat. He stepped closer then, his gaze intense, unwavering. "I know," he said, I just don't want you to think that it didn't mean anything to me." Before I could possibly process the sheer, raw intensity in his voice, in his eyes, Arthur's keys rattled loudly in the front door, the sound shattering the charged, intimate moment into a million tiny, irreparable pieces. The following days were a tortuous, silent dance of deliberate avoidance and stolen, longing glances, with Arthur, my husband, as predictably, as blissfully oblivious as ever. Liam and I were left alone to navigate the treacherous, emotional minefield we had inadvertently, yet undeniably, created. One afternoon, he found me folding laundry in the quiet solitude of the guest room and quietly, deliberately, closed the door behind him. "I don't know how to act around you anymore, Sophia," he confessed, his voice raw, vulnerable. "We have to let this go." "Liam," I whispered, my own voice trembling. "It was just a moment. An accident. It wasn't just a moment for me, Sophia," he said, stepping closer, his presence seeming to suck all the air from the small room. And in that instant, with his intense, searching gaze fixed on mine, I finally had to admit the devastating truth to myself. It hadn't just been a moment for me, either. It is a terrifying thing, isn't it, to feel so starved for a genuine connection that you would willingly Recklessly. Risk everything you have, everything you are, for just one more moment of it? The first time he kissed me, I knew, with a certainty that was both exhilarating and terrifying, that there was no going back. Arthur was out at one of his regular poker nights with his colleagues. And the house was, once again, profoundly, achingly quiet. I was wiping down the already spotless kitchen counters when Liam appeared silently in the doorway. The air between us immediately crackling with all the unspoken words, all the suppressed desires. Sophia, he said softly, stepping into the room. Liam, don't, I whispered, my protest weak, almost non-existent. I can't stop thinking about you. He confessed, his voice a low, husky murmur. This is so wrong. Liam, I manage, my own voice shaking now. I know, he said, closing the small remaining space between us. But that doesn't change how I feel about you. And then, his lips were on mine. It was tentative at first. Exploratory, almost questioning, but I didn't pull away. I couldn't. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathless, I whispered, this can't happen again. Liam, he simply nodded, but neither of us, not for a single second, believed it. What had started as fleeting, almost accidental moments had now spiraled into a secret. A dangerous, thrilling secret we couldn't seem to contain. We were careful, of course, finding refuge, and each other, in the quiet, forgotten corners of the large, empty house. But the very secrecy of our affair only seemed to intensify our connection, making every stolen, illicit touch feel like a breathtaking act of rebellion against the empty, passionless life I had so passively, so miserably, come to accept. The fear of discovery, however, was constant, a low-grade hum of anxiety beneath the surface of my every waking moment. One afternoon, Arthur came home from work unexpectedly early, finding Liam and me sitting just a little too close on the living room sofa, sharing a quiet, intimate laugh. We sprang apart guiltily, but the damage, I feared, was already done. Didn't realize you had company, he said, his voice deceptively casual, his sharp eyes flicking suspiciously between us. The look he gave me then, a look of cold, dawning suspicion, sent an icy chill down my spine. His questions, after that day, became more pointed, more probing. You and Liam seem to be getting along very well, he remarked at dinner one night, his tone dripping with an unsettling, almost sarcastic meaning. It's good to know someone's keeping you company while I'm so busy all the time, he added, his words a thinly veiled accusation. The outside world, our small, insular world, began to close in on us as well. Liam's best friend, Noah, a young man who was sharp and incredibly perceptive, began to notice the change. You've been spending a lot of time at home lately. Man, he said to Liam one day, his curious gaze shifting pointedly towards me. Must be nice, having someone to keep you company all the time. Then there was Miranda, Arthur's ambitious, predatory colleague, a woman with a shark-like smile and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. She started making frequent, unannounced, social visits to our house. Her probing questions always, inevitably, circling back to me and Liam. I get the sense that things haven't been entirely perfect between you two lately, she said to me one afternoon, her voice dripping with a false, cloying sympathy. But I'm sure it helps, having young Liam around. He seems so attentive. The implication, so clear, so malicious, was like a sharp slap in the face. The breaking point finally arrived at a disastrous dinner party Arthur had insisted on hosting for some of his clients. Both Noah and Miranda were there, and the air in our dining room was thick with an almost unbearable, unspoken tension. So, Sophia, Miranda began, her voice cutting sharply through the polite dinner chatter. How exactly do you keep yourself occupied all day? With Arthur gone so often? Before I could even formulate a polite, evasive answer, Noah chimed in, his own tone deceptively casual. Yeah, well, Liam's been here a lot lately, so I guess that makes sense. Sophia is pretty easy to talk to. After all, the entire table fell into a sudden, awkward silence. Arthur's face was an unreadable, stony mask. Liam, his own face pale, abruptly excused himself from the table. And I, my heart pounding, quickly followed him out into the moonlit garden. This is all falling apart. Sophia, he said, pacing agitatedly under the soft glow of the patio lights. They all know, or at least, they suspect. Before I could answer, before I could offer any reassurance, a dark shadow fell over us. What's going on out here? You too? Arthur's voice was low, controlled, dangerous. He looked from my panicked face to his son's defiant one. Funny, he continued, his voice dripping with ice. How the two of you seem to have so much to talk about in private these days. Is there a problem, Dad? Liam challenged, his own voice cracking with a mixture of rage and defiance. Arthur's lips curled into a cold, cruel smile. I don't know, son. Should there be? The very next day, Arthur announced his decision, his voice flat, final. It's time Liam found his own place, he said, his gaze as hard as steel. When I later told Liam, he exploded. He's kicking me out because he's suspicious of us. That night, the final, inevitable confrontation erupted. You have a week to get out. Liam, Arthur told him over a silent, tense dinner. Tolerate what, Dad? Liam shot back, his own voice cracking with a raw, long suppressed rage. Me being here? Or me getting closer to Sophia than you ever could? The ugly, devastating words hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Get out, Arthur seethed, his voice a low, dangerous growl, before I make you regret ever being born. Later that night, after Arthur had stormed off to bed, I found Liam in his room, a half-packed, worn suitcase open on his bed. Come with me, Sophia, he pleaded, his eyes blazing with a desperate, youthful intensity. Leave him, we can start over, somewhere new. For one breathtaking, heart-stopping second, I allowed myself to imagine it, to entertain the impossible, beautiful fantasy, but the crushing, undeniable weight of reality quickly, cruelly, crushed it. I can't, Liam, I sobbed, my heart breaking, I just can't. The next morning, he was gone. The house was once again suffocatingly, unbearably silent. That evening, I found a small, folded note slipped under my bedroom door. My hands trembled as I read it. You think you've won, Sophia, but you don't know the whole story. I'll make sure he does. It wasn't signed, but I knew, with a sickening certainty, who had sent it. Miranda. She knew. She had seen something, suspected something, and now, she was holding the bomb, ready to detonate it. 2 days later, Miranda cornered me in my own kitchen, a sly, triumphant smirk playing on her lips. What is this? I demanded, holding up her threatening note. Exactly what it says, Sophia, she whispered, her voice a silken threat. Arthur deserves to know the real truth. Don't you think? You've already destroyed your own family. Dear, I'm just expediting the inevitable. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me tomorrow, noon, the park by the bridge. I knew, with a chilling dread, that my carefully constructed, secret world was about to come crashing down. My heart hammered against my ribs. I found him waiting, his face etched with a worry that mirrored my own. You shouldn't have come, Sophia, I whispered as soon as I reached him. I didn't have a choice. He said, his voice urgent. Miranda, she came to see me. The ground felt as if it were splitting apart beneath my feet. What did she say? She knows everything, Sophia, he said, his own voice filled with despair. Everything. She wants me to confess everything to my father. To Arthur. His eyes, when they met mine, were filled with a terrifying, shared understanding. She's playing us against each other. Sophia, to get what she wants. Whatever that is. I looked at him then. At this young, beautiful man whose life I had so carelessly, so selfishly, entangled with my own, and the full, devastating weight of our situation, of our recklessness, finally, completely, crashed down on me. We were trapped. We're running out of time. Liam, I whispered, my voice trembling. He grabbed my hand then. His grip tight, desperate. Then we have to act. He said, his voice low, determined. We have to act before she does. This is a powerful, almost painful reminder of how emotional neglect can create a profound void. A void that people will, in their desperation, risk absolutely everything to fill. The slow, insidious decay of my marriage to Arthur had created the perfect, fertile storm for this forbidden, dangerous connection to take root. It begs the question, doesn't it? Is betrayal born from a single, dramatic moment of passion, or is it, more often, The final, desperate act in a long, silent, heartbreaking story of profound loneliness and unspoken neglect? The real tragedy here isn't just the affair itself, it's the intricate, poisonous web of secrets, of manipulation, of shattered trust, that ultimately ensnared everyone involved, showing that the most dangerous, most destructive lies are often the ones we tell ourselves. One must wonder, what would you do in such an impossible situation? Would you confess and face the inevitable, devastating fallout, or try, against all odds, to outmaneuver a determined manipulator at her own cruel game?